The gold ran out. That was the rumor that spread through Cairo in the summer of 1324. That so much gold had entered the city in a matter of weeks that its value had collapsed. That moneylenders and merchants who had spent generations building fortunes watched the price of their most precious metal crumble in a matter of days. The man responsible did not seem to notice, or perhaps did not care. He walked through the streets in silk, surrounded by thousands of attendants, while enslaved men beside him carried solid gold staffs, and camels groaning under the weight of gold dust made their way toward the holiest city in Islam. Historians would later calculate that the wealth this single man distributed on his journey was so vast, it disrupted the economy of an entire region for more than a decade. His name was Mansa Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire, and if you had asked anyone in the medieval world who the richest man alive was, the answer would not have come from Europe or Persia or China. It would have come from the heart of West Africa, from an empire so wealthy, so vast, and so precisely engineered for prosperity that European mapmakers would soon draw him, sitting on a golden throne, holding a golden orb, staring out across an ocean they had not yet dared to cross. This is the story of how that empire was built. And before we go further, if stories like this pull you in, this is exactly the kind of history this channel exists to tell. So consider subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. To understand how Mali became an empire of such staggering wealth, we have to go back nearly a century before Mansa Musa was born, to a moment of near annihilation. In the early 13th century, the region that would become Mali was fractured, dominated by rival chiefdoms, and increasingly overshadowed by the tyrannical rule of a king named Sumanguru Kante, who had crushed most of the smaller Mandinka states around him. Oral tradition, preserved for centuries by griots, the hereditary oral historians of West Africa, tells of a boy named Sundiata Keita, a prince born sickly and unable to walk for much of his childhood, exiled from his homeland, mocked by rivals who assumed he would never inherit anything. These oral accounts, later compiled into what is known as the Epic of Sundiata, blend historical memory with legend. And while historians cannot verify every detail of his early life, the broader arc, a marginalized prince returning from exile to unite fractured kingdoms, is treated by scholars as reflecting real historical events, even if some elements were embellished over generations of retelling. What is better established is the outcome. Around 1235, Sundiata led a coalition of Mandinka states against Sumanguru at the Battle of Kirina, a battle whose exact location remains debated by archaeologists, but whose consequences are not. Sumanguru was defeated, his power broken, and Sundiata emerged as the founding ruler of what would become the Mali Empire, establishing a political and administrative framework, including a council of clan leaders and a code of governance, sometimes referred to as the Kurukan Fuga, that would allow his successors to expand outward for generations. At the center of this new empire sat the city of Niani, believed by most historians to have been located along the Sankarani River, near the modern border of Guinea and Mali. Niani was not built of towering stone like the cities of Europe, but its power did not come from its architecture. It came from what surrounded it. Mali sat at the crossroads of two of the most valuable resources in the medieval world: gold, mined to the south in the forests near the Bambouk and Bure regions, and salt, extracted from vast deposits in the Sahara to the north. Salt, in a world without refrigeration, was not a luxury. It was essential for preserving food and sustaining human life. and in the interior of West Africa, far from any sea, it was extraordinarily scarce. Gold, meanwhile, was hungered for across North Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, where it was minted into currency and worn as a symbol of status. Mali controlled the routes where these two substances met, and its rulers understood something that would define the empire for the next century. They did not need to control every gold mine to become wealthy. They simply needed to control the roads. Picture a caravan setting out from Sijil Massa, on the northern edge of the Sahara, made up of hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 camels, each animal loaded with slabs of salt, cut and shaped like currency. Ahead lay weeks of travel across a landscape with almost nothing to sustain human life. No reliable water for days at a stretch, temperatures that could kill an unprepared traveler within hours, and sandstorms capable of burying a route entirely. Guides who knew the locations of hidden wells were treated as more valuable than the merchants who employed them, because a single wrong turn could mean death for an entire caravan. Those who survived the crossing arrived in the market towns of the Sahel, where the exchange of salt for gold took place, sometimes, according to Arab chroniclers, through a practice known as silent trade, in which merchants left their goods on the ground, withdrew, and allowed the other party to leave payment in return. A system built entirely on trust between strangers who might never see one another face to face. From there, gold moved north, salt moved south, and at every stage of that journey, Mali's rulers imposed taxes on goods entering the empire, on goods leaving it, and on the merchants who passed through its territory. It was not conquest that built Mali's fortune. It was administration. By the time the empire reached its height in the early 14th century, it stretched across an almost unimaginable expanse. From the Atlantic coast in the west to the trading cities along the Niger River in the east, encompassing all or part of what is now Senegal, Guinea, Mali, and parts of Mauritania and Niger. Among the cities under its control was one whose name would eventually become a byword in the English language itself for a place impossibly far away: Timbuktu. Founded, according to tradition, as a seasonal camp by Tuareg nomads near the Niger River, sometime around the 11th or 12th century, Timbuktu grew from a modest trading outpost into one of the most important intellectual and commercial centers in the Islamic world. If you can imagine the scene, camel caravans arriving from the Sahara, laden with salt and manuscripts and Mediterranean cloth, boats moving goods along the Niger from the forest regions to the south, merchants calling out in Arabic, Soninka and Mandinka in crowded marketplaces, you begin to understand why medieval visitors described the city with such astonishment. And if a city built entirely without European involvement, thriving through its own trade networks and its own scholarship, sounds like a story that deserves more attention, let us know in the comments what surprises you most, because this is only the beginning of what made Mali extraordinary. It was under the reign of Mansa Musa, who came to power around 1312, that Mali's wealth and reputation reached their absolute peak. The title Mansa translates roughly to emperor or sultan, and Musa inherited a realm already prosperous. But it was his decision to undertake the Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, that transformed Mali from a regional power into a name spoken across the known world. In 1324, Musa departed Niani with what medieval chroniclers describe as an almost incomprehensible procession. Estimates vary considerably between sources, with some accounts describing tens of thousands of people accompanying him, including soldiers, officials, scholars, and servants, along with a train of camels carrying enormous quantities of gold. Historians caution that many of the specific numbers recorded by medieval writers, who were often working from second-hand accounts, written years or even decades after the journey, should be treated as approximations rather than precise statistics. What is far better documented, because it was recorded by multiple independent sources in the region he passed through, is the effect his generosity had wherever he went. When Musa's caravan reached Cairo, then one of the great cities of the Islamic world and a critical hub of Mediterranean trade, he met with the Mamluk Sultan, and according to the Egyptian scholar al-Umari, who gathered accounts from residents just over a decade after the visit, distributed such extraordinary quantities of gold throughout the city, to officials, to the poor, to anyone he encountered, that the value of gold in Cairo's markets reportedly did not recover for years. Al-Umari's account, written from the testimony of people who remembered the visit, describes a city transformed almost overnight by the sheer scale of what had passed through it. Musa's pilgrimage also included a stop where, according to tradition, he prayed and gave alms so lavishly that it was said gold could be found scattered in the streets long after his caravan had moved on. Whether every detail of these accounts is precisely accurate is something scholars continue to debate, but the broader picture they paint is consistent. An African ruler arrived in the heart of the Islamic Mediterranean world with wealth so vast it reshaped the region's economy, if only temporarily, and cemented Mali's reputation as a kingdom of almost unimaginable prosperity. Within years, that reputation had crossed the Mediterranean entirely. By 1339, a Majorcan cartographer had already begun including Mali on European maps, and by 1375, the Catalan Atlas, one of the most celebrated maps of the medieval period, depicted Musa enthroned, crowned, holding a golden scepter and a nugget of gold, gazing toward a Tuareg trader on a camel, a visual proclamation that somewhere south of the Sahara sat a kingdom richer than anything most Europeans could imagine. Musa's journey did not end with generosity alone. On his return from Mecca, he brought back scholars, architects, and religious teachers, most famously the Andalusian poet and architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who is traditionally credited with introducing new architectural styles to Mali, including the distinctive adobe and timber mosque architecture that would come to define the region. Though modern scholars note that some structures once attributed directly to al-Sahili likely reflect a broader blending of local Sudano-Sahelian building traditions with Islamic influences rather than a single architect's design. It was during this period that Timbuktu's transformation into a center of learning accelerated dramatically. The city became home to hundreds, and by some estimates, thousands, of students and scholars, drawn to its mosques and to institutions like the Sankore Mosque, which functioned as a center of Islamic scholarship, teaching subjects including law, theology, astronomy, and mathematics. Manuscripts were copied, traded, and collected by private scholarly families, some of whom preserved their libraries for generations. Collections that survive to this day and have allowed modern historians to study West African intellectual life directly, rather than relying solely on outside chroniclers. Picture the narrow streets of Timbuktu at dusk, the call to prayer rolling across flat mud brick rooftops, students bent over manuscripts by lamplight, merchants counting cowrie shells and gold dust in the markets below, caravans arriving with news, cloth, books, and salt from across a trade network that stretched thousands of miles. This was not an isolated kingdom on the margins of history. It was, for a time, one of its centers. And if this kind of layered, evidence-based storytelling is what keeps you watching, tapping the like button genuinely helps more people discover it. But no empire, however wealthy, endures forever. and Mali's decline, like its rise, was gradual rather than sudden. Mansa Musa died sometime around 1337, and while his immediate successor, Mansa Maghan, maintained the empire for a short period, the following decades saw increasing instability. Succession disputes became a recurring problem, as the empire's system of inheritance, which did not always follow a clear and uncontested line, left openings for rival claimants and court factions to compete for the throne. Provinces on the empire's periphery, which had been held together as much by military strength and profitable trade agreements as by centralized loyalty, began asserting greater independence as central authority weakened. Compounding this internal fragmentation were external pressures. The Mossi kingdoms to the south launched periodic raids into Mali's territory, and Tuareg groups in the north, who had once been subordinate to Mali's authority, began reclaiming control over trade routes and eventually seized Timbuktu itself in the early 15th century. Perhaps most significantly, a rival power was rising along the Niger River to the east. The Songhai people, who had once been a vassal state under Mali's authority, began asserting independence under leaders like Sunni Ali in the mid-15th century, gradually eclipsing Mali's control over the very trade routes and cities that had once made it the wealthiest empire in the medieval world. By the 16th century, Mali had been reduced from a vast imperial power to a much smaller regional state, its former glory persisting mainly in the memory of griots, in the manuscripts preserved in Timbuktu's libraries, and in the astonished accounts of medieval travelers who had once witnessed its splendor firsthand. And yet, what remains remarkable, even centuries later, is not simply that Mali accumulated wealth, but how it did so through the deliberate control of trade, the taxation of commerce rather than pure conquest, the patronage of scholarship, and a level of administrative sophistication that allowed a landlocked kingdom in the West African interior to become one of the most influential powers of its age. The manuscripts of Timbuktu still exist. The Catalan Atlas still shows Musa on his golden throne, and the story of an empire that once made the price of gold collapse across an entire region continues to surprise anyone who encounters it for the first time, precisely because it so rarely gets told. If this documentary gave you a piece of history you didn't know before today, subscribe and stay close, because the next forgotten empire is already waiting to be uncovered.